You have to train yourself to see and be on the lookout for any sign of success and know how to pull that out of your child so that you're creating connection on their growth and on their character and on their effort as opposed to just outcomes. Secondly, you have to get really good at not giving connection to problems. This is lectures, warnings, reminders, countdowns. Hey, let's go reprocess what just happened and tell me what you could do differently. All of that is creating connection around a failure or a mistake or a problem that isn't going to motivate change.
Welcome to Burning the Ships podcast, and I'm your host, Jason Seward, and today I am very excited to introduce y'all to Dan Peterson. Dan is a licensed clinical professional counselor and a parent coach. He runs Compass for Life, which is a coaching program that is primarily directed towards helping parents through the journey of parenting and raising children. So I'm excited to have Dan on. Dan, we were introduced by a mutual friend, Jake Herbert, and a lot of my podcasts, I know the guest going into it. So, but in some of them, and these are my favorite, I'm going to get to know you with the audience, right? So I know a little bit about you, follow you on social media. I love all your content around parenting and raising difficult kids because I have kids, young kids myself. So I think we're going to be able to connect and have a good conversation. But Dan, welcome to Burning the Ships.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Ready to get started and see where the conversation takes us.
That's awesome. So you're based out of Illinois. We were just talking offline about you do some hunting out there, out in the Midwest. So you're chasing a little bit different caliber deer than we are out here, out east. But yeah, it's I'm excited to get this going. So Dan, what I'm gonna do is I'll start every podcast off. My 9-year-old son JJ gives me a joke to tell at the beginning of every podcast. So we'll do JJ's joke of the week and then we'll get into it. So this week he's got, why can't you trust an atom? Because they make up everything. And that is JJ's joke of the week.
That's 9-year-old quality right there.
Oh yeah, he's been doing it for months now, and I was telling somebody earlier, yeah, he doesn't listen to a single podcast, but he always wants me to play the very beginning when I read his joke. So that's one. Oh yeah. But Dan, I'm gonna turn it over to you, man, and let you introduce yourself, what you got going on, and kind of tell your story, and then we'll go from there.
Cool. Yeah, thanks. So I've been in the mental health field almost 30 years now, and probably the first half of my career, maybe even a little longer, just exclusively working with kids with behavioral, emotional, psychological issues or disorders, and worked in hospital settings, residential settings, family homes, outpatient, wherever kids are or go to get help. Those were the settings I worked in. And probably about 10 or 15 years ago, I was fried, was burned out, and quite honestly, was just really sick of the mental health field because there's this sense of there's something wrong, there's something broken in a kid, and so they need treatment, they need fixing, they need healing, they need medication, and it was just so heavily focused on what was wrong and broken and what wasn't working, and I could just sense that the kid's identity started to be attached to a disorder or some kind of diagnosis. And I didn't really realize it at the time, but what was happening is I was training parents on how to see what's wrong in their kid and how to be focused on what the problem is and how to solve the problem. And it was at the expense of the relationship. And, I think when I became a dad, I would go home and thoroughly enjoy but being around my kids and enjoying parenthood, and then go to work and just see these parents in agony. And I didn't have the right tools. I didn't have the right training or framework to give them an alternative. So kind of got to this point where I was like, I either need to find a different set of tools or a different framework, or I need to go find something else. And long story short, I found a different approach, completely changed my whole paradigm and perspective on how to help kids, especially kids that are challenging or more intense, and really help the parent, who's the most important person on the treatment team, just give them the tools, equip them, build them up, and then help them develop a roadmap to really connect and transform their kid from the inside, not just with medication or consequences or whatever else we try to do to manipulate behavior.
Yep. So you kind of sounds like you had an epiphany or just a complete shift in mindset around it. From a career standpoint, we'll get into like the weeds of, a lot of what you practice and preach, but from a career standpoint, what was your next step, like getting out of that field, and then where did you transition to from there?
Yeah, so at the time I was working in a therapeutic day school that was attached to a psych hospital. And I actually went to this training, this full day training was called Transform the Difficult Child, the Nurtured Heart Approach. And when I went and listened to this guy talk, he like immediately was answering all of these questions I had that were really keeping me up at night. And um, I said, this is the approach that aligns with the type of person I am. I got trained and certified in that approach. I quit, opened up my own shop, stopped treating kids, well, directly treating kids. And then I developed a 90-day coaching program to help parents become the coach or help parents become the therapist. And so all my work now is like parents come to me, they have kids that are struggling. And I say, your kid doesn't need therapy. Your kid doesn't need medication. What your kid needs is a parent that knows exactly what this kid needs.
Yeah.
And that's what the parents are looking for. They can't stand not having the answers or not feeling effective or feeling hopeless and dependent on someone else to fix the problem. So, yeah, I just opened up my own shop, created a couple different programs, and that's what I'm doing now.
You know, a lot of times I'll get guests on here, Dan, that I'm trying to make a connection to the burn the ships mentality, like, leave it behind, go all in on something, no plan B. And a lot of times I'll have guests where I don't know where that connection is going to be made. It has taken us all of 5 minutes for for that to come out. And I didn't realize that you had walked away from a very specific career that you probably could have stayed in for another 30 years, and you transitioned into something on your own to build it. So there it is. There's the link to burning the ship. So, and that's what you continue to do. Going through your social media, a couple things, beforehand, one common theme, and I think you'll get into this a little bit deeper, but it seems like all your teaching and coaching is built around the idea of connection. And you said that word a little bit earlier, and I'm going to read you two quotes that I took from your social media. One is, your emotional connection with your child is just as important to your child's health as the food that you feed them. Love that. It's about connection. And then the second one was, discipline is much more successful if you have created a healthy connection first. So number one, why, and I know the answer to this, I think, but why connection? And then kind of where do you go from there? So everything is built and centered around connection, it seems. And if you want to elaborate on that idea or that thought a little bit more.
Yeah, and I don't want to get into too much psychobabble here or neuroscience here, but when I say your connection is just as important as food and water, shelter, it is a human being cannot exist without connection. A child is 100% dependent upon their parent for several years, but especially in the first, few years of life. And there's all this like neurology and neural pathways that are developing based on how that connection is. And if it's not healthy or if it's absent, there's different parts of the brain that are atrophied that don't grow right. And that's usually in the like impulse control centers or problem centers. So, if you have kids with broken connection or no, unhealthy connection growing up in like really stressful environments or things like that, their brain is different.
Yeah.
And that's on like a neglect or pathology kind of home environment. But if you just look at day-to-day parenting, kids are looking for connection 24/7. And if they get a ton of connection by being annoying or impulsive or, provoking their brother or, they struggle to manage their mood and they get a ton of adult attention to that, you're creating connection based on problems. And most parents aren't aware of that, because you see your kid having problems, you feel compelled to go address it or discipline it. Most parents don't even realize that they're creating connection in highways based on all these problems, and they wonder why the problems don't go away. So that's what I mean by connection. Kids are going to get it one way or the other. Yeah. And the secret is most kids want the deepest connection possible, and they realize they get it by being annoying.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I just was on vacation with my in-laws and with my kids for, almost 10 days. And by the end, I wanted to throw my kid in the lake. I mean, it's just constant poke, 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 poke. It's not that he's a jerk. It's just that he wants my attention. And
Yeah.
so that's what I mean by connection. The piece about discipline is teaching skills. It's mastering a set of skills that you currently don't have. It's the process of leveling up from where you are now and where you need to be. And a lot of times we look at discipline through this lens of punishment. And it's you're in trouble, so you need to pay. Here's the consequence to try to motivate change. Well, the connection with that is I'm pissed at you, or you're wrong, or you're broken, there's something wrong with you. Kids are going to be super defensive against that. And so my thought or my philosophy is if you have a really healthy connection where you're building your kid up, they trust you, the connection is based on my dad's got my best interests in mind. He's got my back. When it comes to disciplines, like, man, you just missed the mark. How are you going to recover and level up from that? Kids are much more open to that because they have this innate value to be competent, to excel, to thrive, to have what it takes.
Yeah. It's been very important for me. My kids are 13 and 9. And I've not my daughter's 13.
Is one that does the cold plunges with you?
Yeah, she is. Yeah,
that's awesome.
She's, I mean, in my eyes, like perfect. And mostly she's a teenager now, and we're dealing with the normal teenage girl drama kind of stuff. But my son has been the challenging one since day one. Like he has just been that very very impulsive, challenges us on everything. And the funny thing is, in talking to my mom and me remembering being that age, he's identical to me. He's exactly who I was, right? So now I find myself parenting my younger self. And that's a weird dichotomy, like trying to navigate that, because it to some degree, like you just mentioned, some days I just want to just get out of my face, like we're out of here. But I understand that, just like me, I can remember being around his age and doing things and knowing at the time I'm doing them to get a reaction, right? And if I don't get the reaction I want, I'm gonna do it even harder until I get that reaction. And that reaction, and hearing you talk about it, that reaction a lot of times that's a form of connection, right? Now we're getting to connect on this intense, back and forth. And so it's been fun, challenging, educational, all the things, trying to navigate raising him. And it will continue to be that way for years. And he's a very strong-willed kid, which I am as well. And but my question for you is, like, you were a professional in this field before you had children, right? And then you have children. So how often do you find yourself having difficulties practicing what you're preaching?
Every single day.
Okay. I expected that to be the okay.
And in fact, when we were just on vacation, my brother-in-law was kind of giving me a hard time about some of my social media posts about parenting advice. Because he's like, when are you going to start practicing what you preach? I'm like, hey, man, I'm doing the best I can. I know the answers, but I'm human. I have limitations. I have good days and bad days. Like, right. I think the thing that's really important, because beating yourself up as a parent isn't going to, help you move forward. Mm-hmm. It's being like aware enough of like what's happening and where I'm at, like emotionally, or how I'm showing up. And then it's being humble enough to model, like, how do you take ownership for your mistakes? And I just view like, oh crap, I screwed up. This is an opportunity for me to show my kids how to take responsibility and make things right, make amends. And my kids are so much more open to taking ownership once I started doing that first.
100%, man. I got goosebumps because this is very recent. Recent within the last year. I've tried to change my approach with my son and my daughter, but it doesn't flare up as much with her. But, you know, at the end of the day, I am his superhero, right? So as he matures into adulthood, he's going to model his behavior after what he sees his hero doing, right? So my if I don't take ownership in those moments, kind of to your point where I lose it. So he's lost it and he gets that out of me. I match that energy level and I come right back at him. I've never, up until about a year ago, I never apologized for my reaction, right? It was always discipline. Um, you screwed up, you made a bad choice, now you're suffering a consequence. And it was never even brought up about how I reacted, right? Which sometimes I react where I scream and I don't hit him, but I get loud and I kind of stand over him aggressively. So now I do that very rarely, but when I do, I am very quick when things calm down to say, JJ, would you agree that you made some bad choices earlier? Yeah. Well, I did too. And I'm very sorry about that. And both of us have to work on that. And that is then so much more effective than just always making him to feel like he's the bad person. And so I'd like to hear it from a professional's viewpoint, the psychology behind that, if you could share something.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, before I answer that, do you remember your parents apologizing and when they made mistakes or?
So I had a little bit of a unique situation. So my father was not in my life very long. So he was out. He was out by the time I was probably 8 years old, and then from that point in and out, but not a parent figure. I had a super calm and compassionate mother. Very calm. I challenged the hell out of her, right? And I can on one hand count the times that she like lost it on me where she was screaming at me or something like that. Now she, she would spank me every now and then, and it had no impact. Like I could barely feel it, um, but she was always um, she rarely did anything that required her the need to apologize, right? So I didn't to I didn't necessarily have an example of somebody that apologized because she was just such a calm person, very calm demeanor, and still is to this day. So,
Yeah, well, that's awesome. Because there's not a whole lot of like unlearning that you need to do because you weren't given a bad example. But part of the reason I ask is like a lot of people, a lot of adults that are our age grew up in a generation where their parents didn't apologize. It was kind of this thing like do as I say,
yep.
not as I do. And I know I had to work through that because I kind of felt like me admitting I did something wrong kind of took me out of the place of authority and then kind of put me into this weird dynamic. And it was just because I wasn't used to that. I didn't see that. I didn't know how to do that. But I think the reason it's really important to own and apologize, like own your behavior, apologize to your kid if you've wronged them, yelling at them, acting in a way that's not congruent with your values. It does a couple things. It communicates to your kids that how they feel in their experience really matters to you. And that they sense that your impact on them really is important. And if you mess it up, you are going to correct it, which again, just affirms their experience, their emotion, how they feel. Like dad is really committed to creating a healthy environment for us. And I think the other thing too is like, how do you apologize? You're not born with the ability to do that. There isn't this like secret formula. So unless a parent teaches you, you got to learn it somewhere.
Yeah.
I'm not really big on apologizing verbally. I think just saying you're sorry is lip service most of the time, but showing that you understand how your behavior impacted your kids. So like, for example, when I yell or lose my patience, not only do I say, hey man, I'm sorry for losing my patience, but I bet that really made you feel uncomfortable or maybe even scared you or confused you. I'm really committed to not giving you that experience. I screwed up. I'm going to really work on my patience. And it gives my kids permission to call me out in a respectful way. My son said to me once, he's like, Dad, I thought you were working on your patience. And I said, you're right. I said I was, and I still am struggling with that. So then I'd, go back to the Dead Edge men's group that I was in and like work on some of those tools there. But yeah, the other thing too that I found, and I'm really, really like hyper focused on this, especially with my daughter. She's almost 16 now, but whenever I would lose it with her, and again, this doesn't happen all the time. It's not like I'm a raging beast here, but um, I would always, apologize, say I'm sorry, blah blah blah, and she would always be like, "It's okay, Dad." And like I felt some relief that she forgave me, but at the same time, I was like, "No, it is not okay. It is never okay for a man, no matter who they are, to yell at you, to raise their voice, to make you feel uncomfortable or scared, especially your dad. So don't ever take that BS from anyone."
Yeah. No, I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, I just think the psychology, the connection, the relationship behind it is it helps them feel secure in themselves, and that I shouldn't feel unsafe in my home, or I shouldn't feel intimidated, or I shouldn't feel like emotionally threatened. Because we have a lot of power, especially as dads, a lot of authority, and you know we we're responsible for the climate of our home. I guess that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's easy to forget sometimes, but at these young ages, they're literally observing everything we're doing. Our facial expressions. I mean, my kids sometimes like I'll I'll just be staring off, like we'll be chilling at the house and just staring off, and I might have, a straight face. And my daughter all the time, "What's wrong, Dad? You okay?" Just because I'm not smiling, because she's used to seeing me smiling, right? So they're watching and listening to everything. Um, and you said something earlier about like verbally saying I'm sorry. What and I agree with you 100%. I'm sorry is not effective if you have to say I'm sorry all the time, right? You gotta like when I apologize, it's done so in a way like, you know, this is a common thing I'll say to JJ especially. You made a bad choice. I responded with a bad choice. It won't be the last time either one of us do this. It will not be. But as long as we're both aware that we got to keep trying to do better, we will. And I'm sorry, but it's going to happen again, right? So we have like a convert. Now he's 9. He's hearing it, but he's starting to pick up on it. And I can't say that his impulse has gotten any better. I mean, he is who he is. But my wife and I are, I believe, getting much more effective in handling it. So, which will help his development moving forward, I believe.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um,
Well, and you've used this word a few times, this like strong-willed.
yeah.
And again, I just want to speak to that for a second if I can, because impulsive, strong-willed, those have this kind of negative connotation attached to it, at least in the mental health field, because it usually strong-willed means they're defiant, or impulsive means they're, they don't think before they act. I like to look at it through this lens of they're energy seeking, or they're intense. They're just more emotionally intense. And it's our job to help them learn how to master that. So it's an asset, not, a burden for them. And if we're not aware of how to do that, and we're constantly trying to correct the strong willedness out of them, we're actually, what happens on their end is they become more strong-willed. They become more defined or more challenging, because you're trying to take away part of who they are.
Yeah.
But the other thing too is, like, in my experience, like strong-willed, hyper energetic kids are the most compassionate, loving kids on the planet.
Absolutely. Yep.
Right. And so it's like that intensity you have is your gift. How do I shepherd that? How do I help you kind of operate within some bounds, so that when you're not stepping out of it and hurting relationships or hurting yourself? But man, my youngest son, he's going to be 14 in a couple weeks. He's the most intense kid on the planet, but he is the most loving person as well. Like, he says, "I love you" more than any person I've ever met.
Right.
Right. And he is so in tune to, like, when I'm in a bad mood or when I'm having a hard day, like, he picks up on the emotional climate of the home instantly. But he's also one that, if he's not getting enough time or attention, he's the one poking you in the back 24 times in 5 minutes. Right.
Yeah. I think, and I've recently, like as an adult, have leaned more into this, but all these things that probably made me a tough kid, like to deal with for my mom, as I've developed and matured and really tried to like internally figure out myself, it's turned into a superpower. Some of those things that and now I see those things in my son and even my daughter in a lot of ways that like, man, we've got to manage it to a point where they don't hurt themselves or get themselves in bad situations because they're making poor decisions. But at some point, as they mature, if to your point, if we shepherd that the right way, it's going to be their superpower. It's going to be right. And so I don't, I in no way, and I've changed this a lot because I used to want him. I just want to change him, like just stop. And now we just got to manage it the best we can, and not I don't want to parent it out of him. I want it to be there until he can learn to develop it into something positive, which is not too negative right now. It just can be a little difficult, you know.
Yeah, and it's probably 95% of the time it's great. It's
Yeah.
the 5% that feels like it's 50%,
Yeah.
and it has more to do with kind of like where we're at emotionally or physically at the time than
Right.
anything.
Right.
What there was something you said that was really helpful. It's I don't want to parent it out of him. I want to manage, like learn how to help him manage it. It's one of the like most important lessons I learned when I was a new father, because my kids are like almost 14, 16, and 19 now, is somebody told me, just so you know, you can't control your kid. And it's not because you're incompetent or you don't have tools. It's because it's not your right and it's not your responsibility to control them. Your job as a parent is to teach them how to control and manage themselves.
Yeah.
And I think like the strong-willed kid, the relentless pursuer of everything. Um, it, my job as a dad or as a coach is to help teach that kid how to manage that and learn how to use that as their superpower. And once you kind of let go of that, you're not affected by it as personally. It's not as triggering or it's not as annoying. When it's like, hey man, right now you're kind of crossing a line here. How are you going to rein it back in as opposed to you need to stop because it's pissing me off?
Right. Right. You're and I want to be clear on this, make sure I understand it. You're now your primary focus, you're not helping kids get through being a child. You're primarily coaching parents on how to do this. Is that correct? So
Yeah.
I've got several questions around that, but what is your, I know it's just in general, but like, what does your typical avatar look like that comes to you seeking help with a child? Like, what are they asking for? What are they generally dealing with? And then what's your, normal steps and trying to learn more about it, to analyze, and then action steps to go forward.
Yeah, it's a good question. Um, yeah, so well-resourced, high-functioning parents that are in over their heads because their kid is wired differently. It's not parents that are like in dysfunction or parents who are traumatized and they have this kid that's, just too much for them. It's they're at this point where they realize the tools they have to raise their kid for some reason isn't working, and it may work perfectly for their other child. And they feel helpless and they feel guilty and they regret the way that they're responding. And, they don't want to put their kid in treatment or put their kid on some medicine because they know innately that, hey, if I can just learn some different tools or some different strategies to build them up and help with a healthy connection, I can enjoy my kid again. Those are the people that usually come to me or respond to like a podcast I've been on or to my social posts.
Um, do you find yourself at all having to somewhat be a marriage counselor in a lot of ways? Because a lot of parents, especially with more challenging kids, a lot of the work they need to do is in the marriage to get on the same page moving forward with this kid. Because if husband wants to approach it one way and wife is not on board with that and trying another way, that can create a division. So do you run into that quite a bit?
Every single time.
Okay. Yeah.
Here's kind of what's happening in that dynamic. If you love your child and you are wanting to be the best parent you can be, but the tools you have don't work for your specific kid. And again, it could be they have ADHD or anxiety or some mood disorder, or it could just be, they're an intense, high energy, connection seeking kid. If the tools you have don't work and you're in a place of authority, you're in a very dangerous, stressful state because you're responsible for this child, but you don't know what to do. So when you start to feel hopeless or helpless, you'll start uncovering every rock, trying everything. And usually what happens at some point in that state is you look at your partner and you're like, well, if you just do it this way, then it will be better. And by this way, I mean more like me.
Right.
And it comes across as pointing the finger, but it's really, I'm desperate. Like what I'm doing is not working. So let me point the finger at you because maybe that will help. And again, it's not about fault and blame. It's the culprit are the tools. The tools you have just don't work. So let's put the blame on that. Come up with a different set of tools that work for your specific child and then get aligned on where we're headed.
Yeah.
That's how I help coach parents because any area you differ or you differ with your spouse on how to raise a kid, that is going to be like a huge magnifying glass or a magnifying glass that's going to be shining on that when your kid misbehaves and what you're doing doesn't work. Like kids are just the master at finding where mom and dad differ and then just pointing on it because it's a way to kind of call the two of you forward.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. I've been very fortunate with my wife. I can't say we've always been on every idea on the same page, but it's just been an open communication. We worked very hard now she was a special education teacher for years and now a second grade teacher. So she's much more well-versed at dealing with different child's personalities and stuff like that than I am. But I've got my own ideas, right? And
well, you're a recovering strong-willed child that is fiercely. Yeah, well, and you're highly successful, so of course you're ambitious and you know what's right. Or at least it feels that way, right?
Yeah, yeah, but and then like a lot of and these are silly arguments, but a lot of my stuff will come from she'll she'll tell me something 20 times, right? An idea or how we should probably approach something. And then I'll go listen to a podcast. This happened very, very recently where I don't know if you know who Kirk Martin is, the Calm Parenting podcast.
I had heard of the calm parenting. I didn't know that was the guy that does it, though.
Yeah, it's a great podcast. But I heard an episode recently, and I came home and I said, "Hey, I heard this. You ought to go listen to it." She said, "I've been telling you this for 5 years, the exact same thing." So we run into that quite a bit, where sometimes my brain, I've just got to hear it and almost feel like it's my idea, But it's that I as far you keep mentioning tools, and that a lot of parents just need to learn or understand the different tools that they have at their disposal to help get through these situations. What are some of those tools? Can you elaborate on some examples or some situations that you help coach through?
Yeah, so let me give you kind of a high level overview and then a couple concrete tools you can start using. So first of all, you need to have 3 components working in unison. Almost visualize like a tripod or a stool. If you have 2 of these, you pull one away, as soon as it gets some weight or some stress, it's going to collapse. And most parents, and I'm sure you guys would fall into this too, is you use all 3 or you have used all 3, but not in unison. So to get internal transformation and permanent change or permanent improvement in the connection and behavior, you have to have all 3 of these. So looking through this lens of connection, what do we connect to? And our connection is the prize or the reward. You have to get really good at giving deep connection, really positive connection in the moments where things are going well. And this is way beyond good job, way to go, I'm proud of you, buddy, that was nice. It's there's like 4 specific ways to do that, and I'll tell you one of them specifically in a minute. But you have to train yourself to see and be on the lookout for any sign of success and know how to pull that out of your child, so that you're creating connection on their growth and on their character and on their effort as opposed to just outcomes. Secondly, you have to get really good at not giving connection to problems. This is lectures, warnings, reminders, countdowns. Hey, let's go reprocess what just happened and like tell me what you could do differently. All of that is creating connection around a failure or a mistake or a problem that isn't going to motivate change. You know, if I was constantly calling you out on what you did wrong and what you can do differently, why didn't you do it this way? Or maybe I'm even like frustrated when I'm talking to you about it. You're not going to be inspired to change. You're going to be defensive. You know, we just have this natural defensiveness that goes up when we're being called on our failures or shortcomings. So I'm not saying you ignore it, but that unnecessary drama, unnecessary connection, you have to get really good at just withholding that. This is where self-control and patience, and quite honestly, this is the hardest part of the whole approach. So you're kind of flipping things. You're giving a lot of energy and connection to the moments where things are going well or when problems aren't happening, and simultaneously you're learning self-control and patience and not attaching to problems.
Yep.
And then the third piece is you just have to be super clear with where the limits and line is. And your discipline is about holding your kids fiercely accountable because you believe they're capable. Just like a referee would officiate a basketball game. If a player steps out of bounds, the ref doesn't get bent out of shape. It doesn't say, hey, you're strong-willed or you have ADHD, let's put you on a special program and give you 3 warnings. But everybody else, you know, if their toes on the line an inch, they blow the whistle and say turnover. You know, so the ref is just saying, hey, it's a turnover. It's not a big deal. Try again, try again, try again. And what happens is the player eventually learns to control their body and avoid going towards out of bounds because they're more aware of that. That's how you level up and master skill, is by being held accountable and getting a chance to try again.
Yeah, that's some powerful stuff. Number 3, clear, like on boundaries, limits, and lines. Consistency has to be a big component for that too. I can't one day just call you out of bounds and blow the whistle and now you get back going, and then the next day ignore it, and then the next day blow up about it, right? Yeah. How to be consistency around those boundaries. Number 2, I'm glad you brought that one up because this was a recent revelation I had with my daughter. We actually, about a month ago, went out to Utah, actually with Larry Hagner and it was a daddy-daughter.
Oh, you went on that?
Well, yeah.
With J-Mac and his daughter too?
It's fantastic. It's fantastic. But we did a lot of reflecting, and my daughter and we're super tight as it is, but what our biggest takeaway, my biggest takeaway from that trip and the time we spent together and like deep conversation was exactly what you're talking about. Number 2, I am so obsessive on always trying to teach her a lesson. Like even through good things, like you did this great job, baby. Next time you need to pay attention to this. Or when she makes a mistake, I'll give her an hour lecture on all the things she did wrong and how she needs to fix it. And I've done that her entire life. And she's great, but her feedback in a very subtle way that turned into not so subtle was, I don't always, like, everything I do doesn't have to be a lesson from you. Like, we can just talk about it. Like, it doesn't have to be a lesson. And my instinct as a dad, as a teacher, as all those things, I felt like everything she did, there was a lesson to be learned in it, and it's my job to teach her that. And she's at an age now where, like, just stop. Just, I'll learn. And she asked me a very powerful question. I'll get emotional about it because it hit me. She said, how did you learn all these lessons that you're teaching me? And I'm paraphrasing, but that's how she asked it. And I don't think she was intending to get out of it what I got out of it, but the answer is I just learned them through experience. Nobody was lecturing me. I didn't get lectured my entire life. My mom was just super compassionate, would hug me when I made a mistake, when I was upset. She praised me when I did good. There were no lectures ever. And I learned through failure and failure again. And then eventually I just learned from, if I touch the stove, it's hot. And she asked me that, and I'm like, she wasn't intending this, but I, I thought about it in the moment. I'm like, I'm trying to give her all these lectures and teach her life lessons. I've got to let her learn them on her own. At times, there's times where I need to step in and give a little bit of a lecture. Do you have any thoughts around that? Because that was a big one for me. Um,
Yeah, I think what the heart of what your daughter was saying is, do you trust me?
yeah,
Do you trust that I could learn this? Do you believe that I'm capable of learning the lesson without, you giving me the advice?
yeah,
Um, and quite honestly too, like for your daughter to be able to share that with you speaks to how safe you are for her.
yeah,
Because there's no chance I would have ever confronted my parents on anything like that in a like real vulnerable way that could provoke them or get them to feel hurt, you know. So you've created a certain level of safety where she feels comfortable calling you out or challenging you or in a healthy, respectful way, of course. Um, but yeah, we like if you care and love for your kid and you see them like failing, struggling, or area where they could improve, like everything in our gut says, go teach. Now's the time. And what I've just learned is that is probably the worst time because that's where they've made a mistake and fail, and their brain isn't in this super open, receptive place to learn.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And it goes like that whole trip, just a lot of eye opening things. I coached her in softball for 3 years when she was a little bit younger. I was the most compassionate coach, except to my daughter. Right, like 11 girls would strike out in a row, and I'd hug them. Good job, sweetie. We'll get them next time. My daughter would strike out. I'd sit there with my arms crossed, playing her down. Right, and
Yeah.
so that
She's trying to strike out.
right, exactly. And now some good came of that. Like I realized that that was a horrible way to be. She hates softball. She never wants me to coach her in anything. I mean, I'm joking a little bit, but now I coach my son, and I've learned just through that mistake, like I don't put any of that pressure on him. I am good job, buddy. Go have fun. Let's go. And I try to probably to the extreme a little too much the other way, but I'm so over the top compassionate with him where I wasn't with her. And he absolutely loves the game. He feels no pressure from me. Whereas she would go up there, not swinging the bat, hoping to get walked, just so, and she's every pitch she's looking at me, and it was a lesson learned. But yeah, man, it's parenting is it's not for the weak. So
Yeah, well, I mean, again, I've been working with kids for almost 30 years. I have three teenagers. One's almost, he just turned 19. I still don't feel like I have any clue some days, right? Like I just feel so, listening to like you share some stuff or like J Mac or Larry, I'm just like, man, there is so much room for improvement still. And again, I think that just comes from a place of like, I want to get this right. I care about you. I want you to be healthy. I want you to have all the tools, and I only have like a short period of time in your life to give that to you. And, one of the other things I was thinking about when you were sharing like kind of that feedback your daughter gave you is your intention was good. Your heart's in the right place. It was just you had the wrong tool to deliver that message. And that's really what, kind of my work is help you align your message with your heart and the right tools so that it sinks in and you get the maximum return.
yeah, no, it's a great. It's out of the three legs of the stool, it was the leg that I was 100% missing, right? And that's a very it's this podcast could not come at a better time because I mean this is on the heels of this epiphany I've just had the last month with especially with my daughter and now with my son. He's 9. I've been doing this with her since she was younger than him. Um, I'm gonna try my best not to do this with him. The same and we'll look back on it and laugh like all the mistakes I made with her. I'm sure we'll laugh about like she was my schooling to learn how to deal with my son. So but it's good stuff. So where, Dan, like, I know you've got the compass for life. Is that is it, can you speak to kind of what you offer through that and like your various levels of coaching and stuff like that?
Yeah, my niche or my like signature service where I probably 90% of what I do is I have a 90-day coaching program to help parents learn and master those three legs of the stool, but do it in a way that fits for their family. When you said you and your wife getting on the same page or parents getting on the same page doesn't mean you do it the same. It means that the same page is we have the same vision and have the same values that we're working towards, but we have the freedom to act genuinely, authentically with like our personality, our style, our experience. It's like, but you have a set of tools to make sure that that happens. So over a 90-day period, we learn and master stand 1, stand 2, stand 3, but in a way that fits for you personally. And it's not just like, some formula you're reading out of a book. It's just being the most healthy version of yourself, to really help inspire change on the inside, to help kids feel really solid about who they are. Yeah. And that, if I'm a strong-willed kid, if I'm an impulsive kid, if I'm a emotional kid, like I need to grow up in an environment that helps me learn how to manage that instead of an environment that tries to control me. So that, and that's where my heart's at. Most of the parents that come to me, it's because there's a problem their kid has that they don't know how to fix. And it's really about how do we work on you? And as a result of that, your kid starts to flourish.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of parents, and I have been at times, my wife as well, are guilty of thinking they need to fix the child when in reality, like everything you've spoken to on this podcast has been about fixing how we parent the child and how we connect and all of those things. I love, when I was going through your social media, I saw a lot of references to the idea you only have 18 summers with them. That's, when you think about that, I think about like I'm probably done playing Santa. This might have been my last Christmas playing Santa. Like that's sad. Or my son was asking questions this Christmas that led me to believe this was it. And I've only got, I mean, my daughter is 13, 4 or 5 more years where she's like fully dependent on us. Hopefully she's equipped to go on and flourish. But yeah, that happens fast. And I think, you know, programs like what you offer or just ideas and strategies can help make those years a lot more connected, a lot more, help position the kids in a lot better situation to thrive as adults. And I encourage everybody to seek out, even like on the surface, I feel like my wife and I are very good parents. So we even have blind spots. And like we just talked about one that within the last month, I wasn't even aware of as a blind spot. And it's that, leg number 2 of your stool. So yeah, where can folks, what's the best way to connect with you and learn more about you, Dan?
Yeah, you can follow me on social or go to my website. I got a lot of content there. I actually just wrote like a free resource to help parents kind of get started with the 3 stands of this approach.
Okay.
It's called How to Stop Power Struggles and Meltdowns,
I love it.
which is really the key about that is helping your kids learn how to master their emotions and just increase like emotional intelligence. That way you're kind of on my email list and you'll get all like great content and be able to connect to me.
Yep. So we're gonna we'll drop the link to your website and all the your social media and stuff in the notes. So I encourage everybody to check that out. Dan, one thing I really appreciate is when I asked you, how well you do practicing what you preach, and you were very honest and answering not very well. Like, you obviously do a good job, but that's refreshing because I think in the coaching space, and this goes with any niche, whether it's parenting, real estate, which I'm in, business, whatever, a lot of folks posture up and, don't they're not very forward facing with their own flaws, right? So they wear this hat of I'm a coach, I'm the authority, I know it all, and I live it all perfectly. And to hear you, and I mentioned Kirk Martin, who I just love his podcast, but he's very similar. You're very quick to say, I don't do it right. I wanted to throw my kid in the lake last week, right? And I know you were halfway joking there, but that's refreshing, and that alone leads me to know that you're doing things the right way. You're not trying to come at this from a, you know, high, holier than thou authority figure where you're the authority preaching to everybody. You're in this battle yourself as well. And I appreciate that about you. So,
Yeah, I appreciate the feedback too, man. That when you're in the position of like coaching other parents, but behind closed doors, you have your struggles and you share that with people for them not to be judgmental and write you off. That's kind of a huge risk to admit some of that sometimes. And
well, if you hadn't have, it's like, no, dude, our kids are perfect. My wife and I just kick it out because of all the strategies that I teach. We're perfect. I probably would have ended the podcast.
Yeah, this one there for sure.
Right, exactly. So, but no, I appreciate you, man. Do you have any thoughts or any more nuggets of value that you want to share before we wrap things up?
Well, a couple things. One is it's kind of an interesting time to be on your podcast because I'm actually all the coaching I do in my 90-day program is like one-on-one. And right now I'm in the process of creating more of a group or a course parents can take kind of at their leisure. So, if anything I said resonates with you or your audience, just know that there's other ways coming down the pipe to work with me, but my kind of my heart is that parents will have the tools to connect with their kid and enjoy their child, not regret things or not try to manage them or just tolerate things. And a lot of times when you're raising kids, there's these lulls we're in where it's like, I don't enjoy being around my kid, or I don't enjoy the way that I'm responding, and kind of have this picture in my head of it looking a certain way or being a certain way. Usually if you are feeling or thinking that, it's because the tools you have just aren't working, right? It's not because you're a bad parent. Like parents that love their kid feel guilty when they screw up, always want more, or always are looking for something. It's not because you're bad. It's just because you have the wrong tool or you need additional tools. So like there's ways to get those extra tools and to actually get the results you're looking for so that you and your kid actually enjoy the time together.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it, man. I love every bit of it. And like I said, we're going to drop all your information in the notes. And I'm glad we finally connected and was able to do this, man. I know Jared connected us a while back, and we had a bunch of banked episodes, but I'm glad we were able to get this done. And I'm excited to share it with the folks. And the bulk of our audience is sitting in the same boat I am. Their kids at home, they're trying to figure it out, and they're running businesses or, whatever the case is. So I think you offer a lot of value, and I hope folks reach out to you and take you up on that. And yeah, man, I appreciate it. And thanks for joining me on Burning the Ships podcast.
Yeah, appreciate it, man. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Burning the Ships. I want to give a special thanks to our sponsor, 608B Capital, helping real estate investors secure fast, reliable funding to fuel their boldest moves. If you're ready to take your investing to the next level, visit 608bcapital.com to learn more. If you found value in today's episode, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast. Your feedback not only helps us improve, but it also helps us reach more people who are ready to burn the ships and commit fully to their goals. And don't forget to share the episode with someone who needs that extra push to take bold action. I'll leave you with this. Burning the ships isn't just about removing the option to retreat. It's about unlocking the courage to charge forward. No matter the odds, the past is behind you and the future is yours to conquer. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time on Burning the Ships.